The following is a lecture given by His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj on the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Srila Gadadhar Pandit in 2009, Washington, USA.
Hare Krishna. So today, as you heard this morning, is a very auspicious day. It's the disappearance day of the great sage Thakur Bhakti Vinod and the disappearance day of Gadadhar Pandit. We Vaishnavas celebrate both the appearance and disappearance days. The appearance day is identified as Avirbhav and the disappearance day as Tirobhav. The Vaishnava's understanding is that a pure soul appears on the direction of the Lord to fulfill a purpose and then he may disappear to our mundane vision, but that doesn't mean that he has disappeared. He's just serving the mission of the Lord somewhere else. Just like in the evening when the sun sets, any intelligent man knows it may have set in Washington, but he's doing his job somewhere else. So we Vaishnavas celebrate both Avirbhav and Tirobhav. In a mature situation, on the day a person departs, we go to the Samadhi, shed tears, offer flowers. But we Vaishnavas on such occasions remember the glories of these personalities, discuss them and meditate on them even more deeply. So today the disappearance of Gadadhar Pandit and Thakur Bhakti Vinod, there's a lot to be said about both these personalities, but we have limited time, especially today. So Gadadhar Pandit, as you know, he's an eternal associate of the Lord. He appeared along with the Panchatattva. He's one of the members of the Panchatattva. And Gadadhar Pandit is described to be an incarnation of Srimati Radharani, according to the great sages. Gadadhar Pandit was very dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none else but the Lord who appeared in the role of a devotee. And Gadadhar Pandit, it is described, was a few years, a year or two, younger than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They both studied together in Gangadhar Pandit's Sanskrit school. The difference was, Nimai was very mischievous and Gadadhar was very grave. Opposite personalities. But Nimai would try and tease everyone, present challenging questions, and Gadadhar was the opposite. Very sober, very grave. And the two were together from childhood. Sometimes the two would be playing in Gadadhar's house, sometimes they would be playing in Nimai's house. Another name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also Gadadhar Prananath. That means the life and soul of Gadadhar's life. Gadadhar's only meditation was how he could serve his friend, Nimai Pandit. So, there are many wonderful prayers also in glorification of Gadadhar Pandit. He was blackish with golden hue, and like Radharani's complexion was golden in complexion. So he had traces of that in his personality. Now, they both were together in Navadvip, and Gadadhar, as we said, was very sober, and Lord Chaitanya Gauranga had predicted that very soon I will manifest myself as such an advanced Vaishnava. The Lord Brahma and Shiva will come to my door. Now, Gadadhar was very affectionate towards Nimai and also towards Mukunda Datta. Mukunda Datta was a great singer who used to do kirtan for the pleasure of the Lord. And whenever any Vaishnava would come to Orissa, Mukunda Dutt would inform Gadadhar Pandit about it, and then two of them would go to have darshan of this Vaishnava and render him service. So, one great Vaishnava, Pundrik Vidyanidhi, had come, and when Mukunda Datta told Gadadhar about the presence of Pundrik Vidyanidhi, Gadadhar went to see him. But there he saw that Pundrik Vidyanidhi was dressed up in a very opulent manner. So Gadadhar said, what type of advanced Vaishnava is he? He's dressed up so opulently. Mukunda Dutt could understand Gadadhar's mood. So Mukunda Dutt then began to recite verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he began to recite verses from the Bhagavatam, Pundrik Vidyanidhi felt such great ecstasy that he started uttering Krishna, 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 and he fainted in ecstasy. So when Gadadhar saw Pundrik Vidyanidhi fainting in ecstasy upon hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, he was very impressed and he had lamentation in his heart. He said, I've committed an offense that I thought Pundrik Vidyanidhi was a materialist. But now I see that he's so advanced. He heard the Bhagavatam and fainted in ecstasy. I have committed a great Vaishnava aparad. This was Gadadhar's mood. I have committed a great Vaishnava aparad. So he wanted to atone for that aparad. When we commit a Vaishnava offense, we should simultaneously atone. Just like there's a nice story that Nimai Pandit was benedicting everyone with love of God. So Nimai Pandit's associates would tell Nimai, you're blessing everyone with love of God, but you're not blessing your mother. And Nimai would say, my mother has offended an advanced Vaishnava, namely Advaita Acharya. Until she atones for that, she will not be blessed with love of God. What was Sachi Mata's anger? Her oldest son had left home and gone in to take sannyas. And then the younger son also took sannyas. And Sachi Mata was thinking, this is the influence of Advaita Acharya. He influenced my older son to leave home, and now he has influenced my younger son also. So within her heart, she had a certain amount of anger at Advaita. And when Advaita Acharya would be informed that Nimai is saying that his mother has offended you, he would say, how can she offend me? She is the mother of the personality of Godhead. But nevertheless, Mahaprabhu maintained that a mother should give up this attitude towards Advaita. So once when Mahaprabhu had exhibited his transcendental form, and Advaita Acharya and others were offering respects, because Advaita Acharya, he had prayed along with Haridas Thakur for the appearance of the Lord, which was later on realized in the appearance of Mahaprabhu. And so Advaita Acharya knew that Nimai is none else but the personality of Godhead. Even though, because he was almost like Mahaprabhu's grandfather's age, Mahaprabhu would hold him in the highest regards. So when Mahaprabhu manifested the divine pastime, Advaita Acharya and others were offering respects, bowing down. And Sachi Mata came from behind, touched Advaita Acharya's feet, took the dust from his feet and put it on her. And when Nimai saw that his mother has now atoned for her offensive attitude towards Advaita Acharya, he said, now my mother is blessed with love of God. So, this example is cited to show that we should be so careful on the path of devotional service. And here we see that even Nimai was upset with his own mother. We the conditioned souls about offending Vaishnavas. Of course, sometimes devotees become so scared of this Vaishnava Prad that even when they see something wrong, they don't want to say something. They want to keep quiet. I may be offending someone. No. If you're saying someone with good motives for the purpose of someone's improvement, then it's not Vaishnava Prad. But if your actions are motivated by envy, hatred, etc., then it could be considered to be Vaishnava Prad. So anyway, so Gadadhar Pandit in his heart was feeling very sad that I have underestimated Pandit Vidyanidhi. I thought he was a gross materialist, but when he fainted hearing the glories of, when he fainted hearing the Bhagavatam being recited, so he said, now I must atone for this offense. So he told Mukunda Datta, I want to take initiation from Pandit Vidyanidhi. So Mukunda came to Pandit Vidyanidhi and said, Gadadhar wants to take initiation from you. So Pandit Vidyanidhi at once accepted this and said, I must have done such pious service to have Gadadhar as my disciple. I must have done such a pious service to have a very surrendered soul like Gadadhar. Like the spiritual master is very happy when he gets a disciple who is fully surrendered. Prabhupada discusses this in the 4th canto in the story of Dhruva Maharaj. And Pandit Vidyanidhi was very, very happy to accept Gadadhar as a disciple. So Gadadhar Pandit used to regularly recite the Srimad Bhagavatam for the pleasure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he would recite the Bhagavatam in the temple of Tota Gopinath. That is there in Orissa. Some of you may have been over there. Once when, just like Radha and Krishna used to perform their transcendental pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan, Gadadhar and Mahaprabhu would also perform their pastime in the forests of Navadvip. And once the Lord Chaitanya was performing his pastimes along with his other associates, Gadadhar prepared a garland for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He put the garland on Chaitanya on Gauranga, just like Radharani would prepare garlands for Krishna. And one of Gadadhar's various duties was that every day he would make sandalwood paste, and he would apply the sandalwood paste on Gauranga Mahaprabhu's forehead. Every day Gadadhar would do this leela. So Gadadhar Pandit, as we said, it's the incarnation described as the incarnation of Radharani. He accepted Kshetra Sannyas. Kshetra Sannyas means you take sannyas and you take a vow along with that I am not going to leave this place. Mahaprabhu was going towards Vrindavan. Gadadhar Pandit wanted to travel with Mahaprabhu to Vrindavan. Then Mahaprabhu reminded him, hey, you've taken Kshetra Sannyas, you cannot leave Jagannath Puri. So then Mahaprabhu sent him back to take care of the Tota Gopinath deity. So Gadadhar was very, very attached to Mahaprabhu, and he would not want to live without Mahaprabhu even for a minute. And some great writers have said Gadadhar had manifested within himself the qualities of both Rukmini and Srimati Radharani. And so Gadadhar was very attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when the Lord disappeared from the planet, Gadadhar was very, very sad. For us in our contaminated state, it's very hard to comprehend how the gopis were feeling the separation from Krishna, or how Arjuna was feeling the separation from Krishna. So Gadadhar very quickly aged because he cannot tolerate being separated from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Gadadhar's one of the duties that Gadadhar had was to make garlands for the deity of Chota Gopinath. It's a very nice temple in Orissa. And that temple is open to everyone, so most of you may have been there. So Gadadhar used to regularly recite the Bhagavatam in Chota Gopinath temple, and for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu and other Vaishnavas. And he used to make garland for the deities every day. Now, after the Lord left the planet, as we said, Gadadhar felt great separation, and he very fast he aged and his body became weak. So he used to make garlands for the deities and then go and garland the deities himself. But Gadadhar became very weak, and he did not have the strength to stretch his hands to put his garland on the deity. So the deity was so kind, she sat down. Gadadhar's hand would not reach the deity of Gopinath. So the deity of Gopinath sat down, so it would be easier for Gadadhar to garland the deity. So this is the only Krishna deity on the planet where the deity is not standing, but it's sitting down. And it is said, the Lord Chaitanya, when he left the planet, he merged into the deity of Gopinath. First, devotees thought he may have left the planet from the Gundicha temple, but then they couldn't find any symptoms of the Lord departing from there. But then they found, it is said, the outer garments of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the temple of Chota Gopinath. And it is said that Mahaprabhu, what did he do? He merged in the deity of Chota Gopinath. So today is the auspicious day where, with the disappearance day of Gadadhar Pandit, there are many nice prayers composed in honor of Gadadhar Pandit by Swarup Damodar Maharaj. If you don't mind, I'll just read 2 or 3. We have enough time. We'll skip the Sanskrit and just concentrate on English. I worship the greatly learned and exalted spiritual master, Shri Gadadhar Pandit, who appears very splendid, engaged in the Lord's devotional service. He always performs pastimes in Braj, where he is very prominent amongst the gopis, who are very dear to Lord Hari. Lord Chaitanya, the son of Sachi, is the dear Lord of Gadadhar Pandit, who is preaching the service of Radha and Krishna. 2. I worship the greatly learned spiritual master, Srila Gadadhar Pandit. He is very expertly absorbed in meditation on the 9 rasas of devotional service, beginning with Ujjvala rasa, conjugal love, and he dances in the waves of the amazing ocean of devotional service of Lord Chaitanya. I worship the great learned spiritual master Sri Gadadhar Pandit, the best of those who are devoted to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, the son of Sachi. Offer respectful obeisance to him and treat him with great importance, and is very dear to Lord Krishna, who is seated in the middle of the lotus flower, which is his heart, assuming his golden form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, there's another nice pastime. Once Gadadhar had brought some pan to offer to Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So when he came there, Gauranga said, "Where is Krishna? Dressed in yellow garments, where is Krishna?" And Gadadhar said, "He's in your heart." So then Gauranga Mahaprabhu started tearing his heart apart. Gadadhar said, "The Lord is in your heart." So he started scratching, say with the purpose that he would see Krishna. Then Gadadhar had to cool him down. He said, "No, Krishna will soon manifest. You don't have to tear your heart to see Krishna." And then Sachi Mata saw this very nice exchange, and she said, "Gadadhar, you I can trust. I can't trust the moods of my son, but you I can trust. So you should look after my son all the time." So Gadadhar Pandit ki. So we'll now proceed to Thakur Bhakti Vinod. We have Thakur Bhakti Vinod's pranam mantra on the board. There'll be Pushpanjali. And at that time also we'll chant Bhakti Vinod Thakur's pranam mantra. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod is described as the mercy incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada has said that he is virtually the founder of the Krishna conscious movement. Thakur Bhakti Vinod appeared at a time when the genuine Vaishnava culture was in very bad shape. British historians had come to India and they had in their writings severely ridiculed Vedic literature. One famous British writer said at that time, "One shelf of books in our library is more than enough than the vast Vedic literature." In other words, the knowledge you can get from one shelf of British books is more than the knowledge you can get in the entire Vedic literature. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod appeared in 1838 as Kedarnath Datta in a very rich family. His family was quite rich, and he had received very good education. He was very well educated. He spoke fluent English, which at that time was something quite rare. And his grandfather was a great visionary, could predict his moment of departure. And before he passed away, he called Thakur Bhakti Vinod and told him that I was going to pass away. I'm going to pass away. And then Thakur Bhakti Vinod visited various holy places in Orissa after his departure. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod at one time was searching for the manuscript of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And believe it or not, he could not find that manuscript. He could not find any trace of where that manuscript could be. And he could see that Lord Chaitanya's original teachings had been lost or taken over by Sahajiyas. Sahajiyas are those who make a show, mockery, of being very religious, but they're not genuinely that religious. They shed tears, roll on the ground, etc. So this gave Thakur Bhakti Vinod great sadness. The Lord Chaitanya's teachings have gradually been lost. And then Thakur Bhakti Vinod started re-establishing Bhakti Vinod, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings in their pure form. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod was a very powerful speaker, writer. He wrote more than 100 books on the process of devotional service. We will read from some extracts from his famous writings on Sharanagati, because in all his writings the message is the same as the Vedic literature. Prabhupada said there's no difference between Bhakti Vinod Thakur's writings and Vyasadev's writings. He wrote books, English, Oriya, Bengali. There's several activities credited to Thakur Bhakti Vinod. He re-established the true teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by his writings. He wrote, as we said, nearly 100 books. Then Thakur Bhakti Vinod also identified the original place of birth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Navadvipa was being presented as a place where Mahaprabhu had taken birth. And the Pandits in Navadvipa were making a fortune. People were going and offering donations, etc. But logically, it did not make any sense to Thakur Bhakti Vinod that he could have appeared over here. His investigation showed that Navadvip was only a town of 100 years old. And I must add one thing, that because he was very well educated, Thakur Bhakti Vinod took up government service. And he soon became a district magistrate. A district magistrate, as you know, is a very powerful position. And during the British rule of India, this was the highest position an Indian could obtain. He could not go beyond district magistrate. And the British government, recognizing his devotion, integrity, honesty, had also given him the responsibility of looking after the Jagannath Puri temple. And at that time, in the Jagannath Puri temple, there were several shortcomings. The offerings were not going on in time. People were stealing money. As they still probably do. People were stealing money from the donation boxes, etc. So the British government put Bhakti Vinod Thakur in charge, and he made sure the offerings were in time, cleanliness standards were established. Prabhupada was very keen that temples have high cleanliness. Prabhupada used to often say cleanliness is next to godliness, and whenever Prabhupada would visit a temple, one of the first things he would look for is a cleanliness standard. And if Prabhupada ever found any dirt anywhere, he would really chastise the local devotees. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur established high cleanliness standards for the Jagannath Puri temple, and the British government was very happy and the devotees were very happy at the reforms that Bhakti Vinod Thakur had undertaken. And he was known to be a very shrewd judge. Very shrewd judge. District magistrate serves as a judge. And of course now he acts in other duties too. But at that time it appears he was primarily a judge. And it is said that he would dispose of a case in 10 minutes that would take other judges, these are British judges, hours and hours of hearing. So he became the object of envy of the other judges because he was so efficient and so fast, he would dispose 20, 30 cases in one day. So this goes to show that a devotee of the Lord is also materially smart. It's not that if you're a devotee of the Lord, you have to be a material idiot. He was extremely brilliant in discharging his judicial duties. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod is credited with many things, as we said. The books he wrote, nearly 100 books, re-established the true teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, discovered the original birth site. Actually, at one point, he had requested to be transferred to Krishna Nagar, and the British government had refused. Then Bhakti Vinod Thakur resigned. He said, okay, I'm quitting government service. Then they put him back there. And then he would, every Sunday, he would go to that area. His mission was to find the true birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And after doing a lot of research, he discovered that that place which is Mahaprabhu's original birth site is now habitated by the Mohammedans. And he went there further to do research. And he came to the realization, this is the birth site. And in Sevakunj, the temple, he was doing his bhajan. We all go on parikram there every year. And from there, he saw a light. And he went to that spot. And there he saw a tulsi plant that was growing and untouched by the Mohammedans. So Jagannath Das Babaji was a Siksha Guru of Chaitanya, of Thakur Bhakti Vinod. He was at that time 130 years of age. He couldn't even walk. He couldn't have his eyelids, cover his eyes. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod, in order to confirm that his discovery was right, he brought Jagannath Babaji was carried in a basket by his servant Bihari. And the moment they reached that location, Jagannath jumped off his basket, started chanting and dancing, saying, "This is Gauranga, 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 Gauranga." This is Gauranga's birthplace. So this is a major contribution. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod was a very powerful preacher also. You could discover about Thakur, you could talk about Bhakti Vinod Thakur for days and days. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur is identified as the seventh Goswami. A very powerful writer said, "I have not seen the six Goswamis, but I have seen Thakur Bhakti Vinod." And he was given the title of the seventh Goswami. I just want to read out to you the schedule that he followed. So that will give you some idea and some inspiration how you can improve. Okay? So, from 8 to 10 in the night, he would rest for 2 hours. 10 in the night to 4 in the morning, he would write. He wrote nearly 100 books. From 4 to 4:30 in the morning, he would take rest. From 4:30 to 7 in the morning, he would do japa. From 7 to 7:30 in the morning, he would do correspondence. There were no emails at that time, and no telephone answering services and voicemails. So he probably would handwrite or dictate the replies. Because he was a very prominent personality, so people would write to him from it. Then from 7:30 to 9:30, he would study the Shastra. Even he would study. He wrote the Shastras, but he would also study the Shastras. Just like there's so many cases where Prabhupada would be reading the Bhagavad Gita and have devotees read his books out to him. Then 9:30 to 10, he would take bath and prasadam. And you want to know his diet? You could easily afford to close the kitchen if you knew his diet. You would not need a kitchen. His diet was half-liter milk, fruit, and 2 chapatis. So you don't really need a kitchen to make 2 chapatis. You can just make a stove somewhere and make it, That was his diet. Then from 10 to 1, he would attend the court duties. That's a tradition even today. The residence of the district magistrate and his office is right next to each other. In India, even that's true even today. So it appears that Thakur Bhakti Vinod did not have to spend hours traveling, no traffic jams. His residence and house was right next to each other. From 10 to 1 would be court duties. 1 to 2, he would come home, refresh himself. Then 2 to 5, he would again go back in the court for his court duties. And 5 to 7, translate text. And then 7 to 8, in the evening, take prasadam, shower. And you know what his diet was in the night? Half-liter milk, rice, and 2 chapatis. It appears that he didn't take any vegetables. Anyway, so in essence, he would sleep for 3 hours, write for 9 hours, do japa for 5 hours, and work for 6 to 7 hours. So just to give you an idea. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod had predicted that a very powerful Senapati means a general. A very powerful general will appear who will take Lord Chaitanya's teachings to the whole world. He had predicted that people all over the world would be learning how to play mridanga and kartal. And they would be congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And 3, he had predicted that Westerners, and he listed several countries, including America, Russia, France, Westerners would come to Mayapur and along with the Bengali devotees take part in ecstatic kirtan, dancing, chanting. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod was a fearless preacher. At the time he was in position, there was a bogus yogi claiming to be an incarnation of Mahavishnu. And this yogi was flirting with people's wives, daughters, sisters. And numerous complaints had reached the British government about this man's misbehavior. So the British government, they had good administration, the Britishers. They deputed Thakur Bhakti Vinod to investigate this. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod knew this man's an impostor. So along with his police force, he went to the jungle where this bogus yogi was hiding or staying. He said, this bogus yogi had mystic powers. So by his mystic powers, he knew that Bhakti Vinod Thakur has come. So he said, Kedarnath Datta, I know why you have come here. So, you don't know who I am. I am Mahavishnu. And I'm going to drive the Britishers out of India. And when I drive the Britishers out of India, I'll make you the viceroy of this country. Viceroy was like the representative of the queen or the king. Thakur Bhaktivinoda said, if you are Vishnu, what are you doing in this desert, in this forest? You should be residing in the Jagannath temple. This is not your place, Vishnu. So the bogus yogi said, Jagannath temple? That's just a statue made of wood. So the moment he said that's just a statue made of wood, Thakur Bhaktivinoda told the policeman, arrest him! But the policeman was so nervous. Oh, we can't arrest Mahavishnu. So they were getting scared of handcuffing the Mahavishnu. But Thakur Bhaktivinoda had judicial powers. He said, now I order you, handcuff him. So then he was handcuffed and brought for a trial. After this event, Thakur Bhaktivinoda's whole family, wife, children, they all fell sick. And the whole town started talking. Because Thakur Bhaktivinoda has imprisoned Vishnu, this is the reaction. And people would come to him saying, release Vishnu, your children are dying, your wife is dying, they're on the deathbed. But Thakur Bhaktivinoda knew beyond doubt this man was an impostor. So a trial was held, and on the day Thakur Bhaktivinoda was supposed to write the judgment, his whole right side got paralyzed. His hand would not move. He could not lift the pen. He knew this was that mystic yogi's influence or work. But he was determined. And finally, at 9:30, half an hour before the judgment was to be pronounced in the court, Bhakti Vinod Thakur was able to push his hand and write the judgment. And this yogi was sentenced to 1.5 years to some time in prison. And then that yogi later on committed suicide. Thakur Bhaktivinoda's wife and children recovered, and the whole town then said he was right. So he was so bold that even though his wife and children were on the deathbed, he did not go back, relent in discharging his duty. So the people were very happy that this bogus yogi had been crushed. Then there was another person acting. There was a tree where a ghost lived. And in India, people, there are many trees where ghosts live and people go and worship those trees. Even now that tradition goes on. I see people doing that all the time. So many people were worshipping this ghost in this tree. So once a father of a famous girl came to Thakur Bhaktivinoda to beg alms. Thakur Bhaktivinoda told him, I'll give you alms, but first you read the Bhagavatam underneath this tree. So for 1 month, he read the Bhagavatam underneath the tree. And after 1 month, the tree crashed. And the people were very happy. And the ghost disappeared. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a very bold preacher. And he had prayed that the Lord may send a son who could carry out the mission. And there's that famous story that when Thakur Bhakti Vinod was working as a magistrate, the Rath-yatra cart would normally stop in front of the magistrate's house, and his mother took the opportunity to place Thakur Bhakti Vinod at the feet of Lord Jagannath, and the garland from Lord Jagannath fell on the child. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod could see that this child is not ordinary. He's been sent by the Lord in response to his prayers. So Thakur Bhakti wrote many famous books. Most of the prayers that we sing are composed by Thakur Bhakti Vinod, Jai Radha Madhav, the Arati, Yasomati Nana, Shri Rabhidaja. All these songs are composed by the great sage Thakur Bhakti Vinod. As I said, there's a lot to be said, but I just want to read very quickly 2 extracts from his very famous work called Sharanagati. In Vancouver, we have a farm that was named after Thakur Bhakti Vinod's poem Sharanagati, and the 6 symptoms of surrender. And Mahaprabhu talked in that prayer, in that sloka. The word Sharanagati is also used. What does Sharanagati mean? To surrender. So all of you are here for that purpose, isn't it? So this is some advice from Thakur Bhakti Vinod. The Thakur was always courageous and acted for everyone's welfare. He would keep his personal needs to a minimum, and no one ever walked away from him dissatisfied. Even his critics would praise him, and he was very generous. He would never lose his temper, never use insulting words. He was always very graceful and respectful, even to those who did not agree with him. Somebody doesn't agree with him, we get nasty. But Thakur Bhakti Vinod was very respectful. So this is what he advises us. You should always absorb your mind in attentively chanting Krishna's glory. So Thakur Bhakti is advising us, always chant Krishna's glory. By performing Krishna's kirtan, you will gain mastery over the mind. So many times devotees say, mind is troubling me, what to do with the mind, isn't it? So Thakur Bhakti Vinod says, by performing Krishna's kirtan, you will gain mastery over the mind. Then he says, give up false pride. False pride is a stumbling block. Always think yourself to be worthless, destitute, lower, and more humble than straw in the street. So he says, consider yourself to be worthless. We usually think I'm worth a fortune, isn't it? But he says, consider yourself to be worthless, destitute, lower and more humble than straw in the street. So here, he's reflecting the same mood that Mahaprabhu does in the 3rd verse of the Sikshasaka. Practice forgiveness like the tree. Giving up all violence towards other living beings, you should maintain them. So we are non-violent towards everyone, and we should maintain that. Throughout your life, you should never give anxiety to others. Some of us think it's a pleasure to give anxiety to others. Some people just want to make sure that I make everyone's life miserable. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod says, don't give any anxiety to others. And then, but do good to them, make them happy, and forget about your own happiness. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod is giving us a higher standard of surrender. He says, make others happy, but don't worry about your own happiness. And what's our philosophy? I care a hoot for the other guy. I only want my happiness. But Thakur Bhakti Vinod says, make others happy. Don't worry about your own happiness. So that's a higher realization. Thus, when you become a pious good soul, by possessing all good qualities, you should give up desire for fame and honor. So normally we have this strong desire for fame and honor. He says, give up desire for fame and honor. And just make your heart humble, knowing that Lord Shri Krishna lives within all living beings. You should respect and honor everyone at all times. That is why devotees don't even harm an ant, because we recognize the Lord is there in everyone's heart. You will attain virtue by being humble, merciful. How do we manifest the quality of mercy? By preaching. When you preach, you're manifesting the quality of mercy. Respecting others and renouncing desire for fame and honor. In such a state, you should sing the glories of the Supreme Lord, weeping. Bhakti Vinod submisses prayer at the lotus feet of the Lord. O Lord, when will you give me such qualities as these? So, Thakur Bhakti Vinod is praying, Lord, when will you give me these qualities? So on this auspicious day, the disappearance day of Thakur Bhakti Vinod, all of us can fall at his feet and pray. What do we pray for? Just like Thakur Bhakti Vinod prayed, please, our Lord, give us the benediction so that we can develop these divine qualities which are crucial for one who wishes to go back to Godhead. So today is Thakur Bhakti Vinod's disappearance day. We should fall at the feet of the great Acharya and beg him for his mercy so that we can develop these wonderful qualities that he talks about in his Sharanagati prayer. And one last point, that it was Thakur Bhakti Vinod who was the first big international preacher and book distributor. In 1896, the year that Prabhupada appeared, he sent his book on the life of Lord Chaitanya to universities around the world. So he was such a visionary. And one of the universities he sent it was McGill University in Montreal. I know when I joined in Montreal in 60 years. And we had the fortune to go to the university. But in 1896, he sent his book on the life of Lord Chaitanya to universities around the world. And this book was there in the McGill Library in Montreal at least till 1967. I don't know if it's still there, but it was there at least till that time. So this shows the power of book distribution. Book distributed in 1896 and people are reading it till 1967. So, and Prabhupada dedicates teaching the Lord Chaitanya to Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and in his dedication he says, he spread the teaching of Thakur Bhakti Vinod to the Western countries in the year of my birth, in the year of my appearance. So Prabhupada appeared later on to fulfill Thakur Bhakti Vinod's order. So by the will of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the desire of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by the will of Thakur Bhakti Vinod and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the desire of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada was able to take Lord Chaitanya's teachings to every corner of the globe and establish Krishna consciousness. So falling at the feet of Gadadhar Pandit and at the feet of Thakur Bhakti Vinod, we should all pray that we may also get attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the way Gadadhar Pandit was attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Isn't it? Gadadhar Pandit could not live without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 1 second, like a fish can't live out of water. So that should be the goal that we have to work towards. And Thakur Bhakti Vinod in his wonderful Sharanagati offering prays that he may develop these qualities. So we should also pray that we may develop these qualities so that we can develop love of God, which should be the goal of everyone. Hare Krishna.